As angry as I wanted to be at this guy, I cannot help but be impressed by his extremely lucky shot on my engine. Hey guys, Mustang here, and today I am going to be breaking down a clip I recorded a few months ago during a match of War Thunder. Back in October of 2025, I was playing a match of air arcade battles in War Thunder, where I was flying a P51 Mustang of a 4.7 battle rating. During the match, I came across a P51 Mustang of the 4.0 battle rating, and this was an extremely early model Mustang with a Razorback canopy design and was armed with 4 20mm cannons instead of 4 or 6 50 caliber machine guns. Now, just like in my video I did on Captain SlicerX's Twitch clip of him playing War Thunder, I'm going to do a historical overview of both Mustangs, compare their strengths and weaknesses to each other, then look at the clip, break it down, and go over what I did wrong. However, because I'm looking at what is essentially the same aircraft, this overview will be more or less about the Mustang's entire history, from the late 1930s and early 1940s, all the way up to the end of World War II, and even going into the Cold War and today. So let's get started. The P51 initially began its life as a conceptual prototype design known as the NA-73X, which was created by designers at North American Aviation based out of Inglewood, California. When World War II kicked off in 1939 and continued to escalate well into 1940, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Lend-Lease Act of 1940, which basically allowed us to support the Allied forces both in Europe and in East Asia without directly getting involved. One of the ways we did this was by sending them military equipment such as Curtiss Aircraft Company's P-40 Warhawks. In 1940, the British Air Ministry sent representatives to the United States to ask North American Aviation to build a new production line for Curtiss P-40s that were meant for the British Royal Air Force. However, members of North American Aviation presented an entirely new design that they could develop in far less time than it would take to build a brand new production line for P-40 fighters. On October 26th of the same year, the XP-51 Mustang prototype rolled out of its hangar and flew in front of both British Air Ministry representatives and their American counterparts, where both parties were extremely impressed with the Mustang's superior speed and maneuverability over the P-40. After the demonstration was finished, British Air Ministry representatives started placing orders for the finished production P-51As that would start production around 1941, or as they called them, the Mustang Mark Is. Now, the XP-51 prototype, as well as its finished model, the P-51A, and some of the early P-51B variants were all wedded to the Allison 1710V inline engine. This is the same engine that was wedded to the P-40 for a time, before both planes switched over to the Packard 1650 inline engine, which was an American licensed copy of the British's own Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Now, despite being powered by the same engine as its predecessor, the XP-51 prototype, as well as the early production P-51A model, were actually much faster than the P-40 and even early war Spitfires that were flying at the time. The reason for the superior speed and even the superior maneuverability that was granted to the P-51 was its laminar flow wing design. And I'm going to show you guys a clip of the Dogfights episode that goes into the P-51 Mustang's history. Here's the clip right now.
Unlike a conventional airfoil, the cross-section of the Mustang's wing was thin at the leading edge and thicker toward the middle, with a similar curvature on both top and bottom. This innovative design reduced the buildup of air at the leading edge of the wing, called drag, and ensured laminar flow. the smooth flow of air over the wing contours at high speed.
Unfortunately, despite being much faster and more maneuverable than the P-40, it still had a lot of the same limitations as its predecessor, such as a limited combat altitude of only about 10 to 15,000 feet due to the Allison engine being a relatively weak inline engine compared to the British's Rolls-Royce Merlin, and even compared to a bunch of radial engines that were coming out at the time, such as the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. As the United States got involved in World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor, new P51 Mustangs were starting to roll off the assembly lines like hotcakes, with the newer P51B models rolling out. Initially, these models still had the Allison 1710 engine, but later B models and the newer C models that were also starting to be produced were equipped with the new Packard 1650V inline engine, which, as I said before, was an American licensed copy of the Rolls-Royce Merlin inline engine. By late 1943, as P51B models were starting to arrive in England, the P51 Mustang was starting to replace the P47 Thunderbolt and P38 Lightning fighters as bomber escorts, due to both planes consuming far more fuel and having far less range than the Mustangs. In December of 1943, the P-51 Mustang would fly its first escort mission for B-17 Flying Fortresses deep into Germany, escorting them all the way in and all the way out, without a single bomber being lost, which would mark the P-51's full-time transformation into a bomber escort fighter. By the summer of 1944, as the Allied forces began the liberation of Europe, the P-51D Mustang started entering service with the U.S. Army Air Force and the British Royal Air Force, replacing the older P-51B and C models as long-range escort fighters and even ground attack fighters. The P-51D model was a completely different beast from the original P-51A models that started entering service with the U.S. Army Air Corps and British Royal Air Force in 1941 and 42. Now wedded to the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine instead of the Allison engine, equipped with 6 new 50 caliber machine guns instead of 4 older ones, new underwing pylons for carrying external fuel tanks, as well as new internal storage tanks to contain more fuel, and a brand new canopy design, the P-51D Mustang was a far superior beast compared to the P-40 and the early P-51A models that started rolling off the production lines. Over the course of the entire war since entering service in 1942, the P-51 Mustang would shoot down nearly 5,000 German, Italian, and Japanese fighters, as it did indeed see service over the Pacific and East Asia during the conflict. The P-51 would even see some service during the Cold War, such as Korea, where it would spend the opening months of the war performing strafing runs against North Korean and even Chinese forces, and even see some service in the 1960s during the soccer wars between several Central American nations. As of today, the P-51 Mustang is more or less a museum piece now, but several are still flying in the world today as a part of air races and air shows across the world, especially here in the United States, with the commemorative Air Force in Georgia having several of their own. With my overview of the P-51 Mustang's history now out of the way, I'm going to be comparing the advantages and disadvantages both Mustangs in my clip have over one another. Let's get started. Now, both Mustangs actually have really good dive rates. Being able to dive on a column of enemy vehicles on the ground or on a formation of enemy aircraft in the sky, as well as even being able to pull out of said dives with ease. However, the P-51D has a much stronger, more powerful engine in the Rolls-Royce Merlin compared to the P-51A's Allison engine that it has, with the D model being able to climb much faster and much higher, since it has a service ceiling altitude of about 40,000 feet compared to the A model's 15 to 20,000 feet. The P51D model also has an unobstructed canopy frame with a bubble-type canopy instead of the razorback canopy that the P51A has. This gives the D model unobstructed visibility all around. Combine that with rear-facing mirrors that can also be fitted to the top of the D model's canopy frame, gives it far superior visibility over the P51A model. The P51D also has a larger ammo capacity thanks to it having 650 caliber machine guns instead of 4 much larger 20mm cannons. However, the P51A Mustang isn't without its own few advantages, that one advantage being its harder hitting cannons. 20mm cannons can hit much harder than 50 caliber machine guns do, and if equipped with the right ammo type, can absolutely destroy other aircraft that are similarly armored to it, such as my P51D Mustang, which I learned firsthand in my War Thunder clip. With the comparisons out of the way, let us look at my War Thunder clip and see how I got destroyed by this one player flying the P51A against my P51D, and then break down the clip to see what I did wrong. Here's the clip right now. As we see in my clip, I am constantly and desperately diving down towards the deck and zoom climbing back into the air about 1,000 feet from the ground, trying to dodge this P51A from my tail, even trying to get on his tail, hoping I can maneuver well enough to get him to make a mistake. However, when I dive back down to the ground again, I am shot at by the P51A's 20mm cannons, one of the shells of which actually hits square into my Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, knocking it out and causing me to lose power and throttle. I then make a right turn, which is, I don't know why I did it, and I get shredded once more, my plane burning and falling to the ground. So, what did I do wrong in my clip? Well, it is simple. I was flying my P51 Mustang as if it were a sack of wet bricks, constantly pushing the throttle on my left stick to the point where I had no throttle left, especially since I was pushing the throttle while I was diving down towards the deck, as well as pulling out from those dives and zoom climbing back to altitude. This put me in a very dangerous and very vulnerable position where the P51A could actually hit my P51D and destroy it, because I had no airspeed and no throttle to make any additional maneuvers or just go straight forward and hope I can outrun him, because my P51D is a lot faster than the P51A was. And as pissed off as I wanted to be of this P51 player who had shot me down, I was all too impressed with how he actually managed to hit me square in my engine, like literally dead center into my Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, and knock it out. As I don't really see that all that often. I don't see a bullet or a cannon shell penetrate into my engine dead center and destroy it. So I had to give him kudos for that. All in all, no matter your rank or battle rating in War Thunder, you will always encounter those kinds of players in lower rated aircraft who will destroy you despite your best efforts to destroy them. I mean, in this same War Thunder match, I encountered this guy multiple times, and at the end, I was actually able to shoot him down with an A-26 fighter bomber just as the match ended. And that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed seeing how dogshit I am at War Thunder, and I also hope I gave you all a pretty good chuckle at my gameplay in my clip. I also hope you all enjoyed learning a little bit more about military aviation history and about my all-time favorite aircraft. Now, before I hop off for today, I do want to let you guys in on something that I like to do behind the scenes in between my videos, and that is fanfiction. For those of you who do not know, I am a fanfiction writer based on the writing website Wattpad, and I currently have multiple fanfictions fully published and currently still in development. These fanfictions include both Pokemon and Star Wars fanfictions at the moment. However, I am looking to expand to other fanfictions of other franchises. If you guys are curious about my fanfics and want to read them, I will leave a link down in the pinned comment of this video to my Wattpad page where you can read and even comment on my fanfics, giving me constructive feedback so that I may improve, gain experience, and eventually gain the stones to finally write my very own original story. And with all of that said and done, I want to thank you guys once again for watching this video. If you want to, you can like, you can dislike, you can leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more of my content in the future, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell down below. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.